So it looks like we're reaching the top of the hour, so we can go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. My name is Anna Lydia Blakely, and I would like to welcome you all to ACCE's Education Attainment Division Community Webinar. It looks like we have a large group on today's webinar, and on behalf of ACCE, I thank all of you for taking the time out of your day for joining us for a discussion about the economic imperative of advancing immigrant integration opportunities. Before we begin today's presentation, I would just like to go over a few quick housekeeping items. So just so that all of you know, today's webinar is being recorded, and it will be available on ACCE's online university after today, which means that you can share the recording with your colleagues. If you take a look at the webinar toolbar in the right-hand corner of your screen, you should also see a copy of today's presentation available to download in the handout section of your screen. As you're looking at the toolbar, you should also see a chat box just above the handout section, which enables you to submit questions to our presenters. After you hear from our guest speakers, we will dedicate about 15 to 20 minutes to answering any questions you have, and we will encourage all of you to utilize this feature to submit your questions.
Represented by 2 or even 3 times their population size when it comes to owning Main Street businesses, which are the mom and pop shops, the restaurants, the laundromats, the nail salons that keep neighborhoods interesting and vital. They drive foot traffic and drive consumer spending. Immigrants are also essential to population growth. There were no major metropolitan areas in the last 40 years in the United States that grew without at least 10,000 immigrants joining those communities. Immigrants are also overrepresented in critical fields like STEM and healthcare, where we see labor force gaps in cities across the country. So you'll see on the next slide some examples. And as many of you know in your own work, the economic impact of immigration in cities is felt in a very tangible way. Immigrants can determine whether or not a city grows, is starting new businesses and creating jobs, and has the key talent it needs to fill jobs in fields to keep local economies running. Our goal as an organization and in our partnership with ACCE is to really highlight this message and to create a narrative that shows exactly how immigrants are helping cities grow and compete, and why ensuring that immigrants are successful is an economic development strategy. We use quantitative research to show the role of immigrants in local and state economies, and then we work with leaders in business and in government to use these numbers in making the case for why policies that attract and retain immigrants are part of an economic growth plan. So you'll see on this slide a few examples of some of the reports that we've done for various cities across the country. And what they're showing is a trend that we see nationally, not just in these 6 cities, but that immigrants are contributing millions of dollars to the tax base, in spending power, and in GDP, among many other indicators as well. And you'll also see on this slide how the local press has really picked up and reported on this issue. So if you look in Cincinnati, immigrants are just 5% of the population in Cincinnati, but they're 8% of business owners and 21% of Main Street business owners. In Denver, in the report that we did there on the metro statistical area, we found that immigrants in the metro area contribute more than $1 billion to Social Security and more than $256 million to Medicare. In Salt Lake County, and you'll hear from Jason in a moment, immigrants contributed $8 billion to the metro area's GDP. In Louisville, immigrants are a really small percentage of the population. They're only 5% of the population, but 42% of international students are studying in STEM fields, which we know is so important to all of our cities. And then lastly, in Pittsburgh, in Allegheny County, if the county were to retain just half of the international students that are currently studying there, over 1,600 jobs would be created in 6 years, and GDP would rise by $385 per capita within the next 30 years. So these are just a few examples kind of cherry-picked from the different reports that we've done, but you'll see that they were all picked up by the local media, and we've helped in each of these cities shape a narrative on what this data actually means and how to utilize it. So understanding the asset of having a successful immigrant population, these cities and many others around the country have used these reports to create momentum and to build support for intentional, proactive strategies that seek to maximize the contributions immigrants are making. And on this slide here, you'll see a map of the United States that shows exactly where chambers are leading this work. And so there are even more dots that could be added for the city governments that are leading, but here you'll see specifically these are where the business community has really come together and acknowledged that immigration is an asset to that city, and they want to be proactive in welcoming international communities. So this includes efforts that kind of run the gamut from a multi-sector task force like what Des Moines and Salt Lake County and Cincinnati are pursuing, where the business community is working with the local government and leaders across civil society to put together a strategic plan that ultimately comes up with recommendations for how the city can be accessible to immigrants and to be attractive to immigrants, to really specific programs that are targeted, like for example in St. Louis, they have programming to attract and retain international students. And in a moment, I'm going to turn it over to Jason Mathis from Salt Lake County and Mary Bontrager from Des Moines, whose efforts are truly at the forefront of this work in our country. And they're going to go into the specifics of what this work actually looks like on the ground. But before I do that, I just want to quickly give a few examples of how PNAE can be a resource to your chambers when it comes to promoting local initiatives that support economic development and immigrant integration. So on this slide, there's two main areas that we engage in, and then a few resources and opportunities that I want to highlight for you as well. So the first, which you've already heard me talk about, is economic research and messaging. So as you saw on the previous slide with examples from those 6 cities, PNAE can conduct economic research that highlights the role of immigrants in local and regional economies. And we can look either at the city level, at the MSA level, or at the regional level, and include a variety of indicators that go beyond just the ones that you saw today. And if you're interested, I'm happy to talk more about that at the end, the different kinds of economic indicators that we can include. Additionally, our communications team can work with chambers to develop a narrative and a messaging strategy to accompany this kind of research. And this can include placing op-eds, leading media calls, and setting up editorial board meetings. Typically, the launch of these reports is picked up in major news outlets, as you saw earlier. Secondly, we can work to assist chambers in the development of programs that actually facilitate immigrant economic development and integration. So this is what we're currently doing in Des Moines and Salt Lake County, and you'll hear about that in just a moment. And lastly, I want to highlight some exciting resources as well as some upcoming opportunities. In addition to the local and regional research, we also have comprehensive data for every state, which is available at the URL maptheimpact.org. And so what this is an interactive map where you can click on any state and see a range of indicators from the percentage of STEM graduates to how immigrants are offsetting specific labor shortages by industry in that state. And we're actually going to be updating this data with even more detailed reports by state as part of a national campaign on August 3rd. So this is coming up. On August 3rd, PNAE is launching our Reason for Reform campaign, and we'll be holding 50 events in all 50 states to launch updated reports that outline the role of immigrants in each state economy. Later this year, the data from these reports will be featured in a new interactive map showing the case for immigration reform across the country with statistics and personal video testimonials in every single congressional district. So not only will this data be available by state, but also by congressional district. So if any of you are interested in participating in one of these events in your state on August 3rd, just let me know at the end and we're happy to connect you with our efforts there. Lastly, we also have a best practice toolkit that looks at the local level on how to do immigrant integration work like what Des Moines and Salt Lake are leading. And this is another interactive map that shows all of the different efforts around the country where this work is being done. And that is available at gatewaysforgrowth.org. So at this point, I'm really excited to introduce our first speaker, Jason Mathis. Jason is the Executive Vice President of the Salt Lake Chamber, and since 2008 has served as the Executive Director of Salt Lake City's Downtown Alliance. Jason currently serves on several boards, including the National Immigration Forum, and previously worked for 12 years at the Salt Lake Convention and Visitors Bureau. In 2013, Jason was named a White House Champion for Change for helping to draft the Utah Compact. So Jason, I'll turn it over to you, and we look forward to hearing about the work you're doing in Salt Lake.
Awesome. Thanks, Kate. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, excellent. Excellent. If we can go on to the next slide, I wanted to just give a little background on how the Salt Lake Chamber first got involved in the immigration discussion. Back in 2010, many on the call may remember that Arizona passed a fairly harsh immigration reform bill that required police officers to ask people for documentation. And it seemed likely that Utah would follow suit. Utah is a very conservative state. There was a lot of pressure for the Utah legislature to do something similar. But it seems that the people who really run our state, the university presidents, the religious organizations, the sort of captains of industries, were horrified by this. This really was not the direction that our state wanted to go, but we felt powerless in some ways to stop this. So the chamber got involved and really corralled a group of community leaders to draft something called the Utah Compact. It included business leaders, political officials, religious organizations, law enforcement, and media outlets. And through the summer of 2010, we worked on this document and released it on November 11th, which happened to be the 300th anniversary of the signing of the Mayflower Compact with the Pilgrims. The next slide just talks about what the Utah Compact said. It really focused on five very simple concepts that we felt were critical in thinking about immigration reform. One was federal solutions, that immigration isn't an issue between Utah and other countries. It's really the United States and other countries, and Utah should not move forward in coming up with our own set of immigration policies that conflict with the national standards. That law enforcement, we value the rule of law, but we also respect law enforcement's ability to make their own professional judgments about how to enforce that rule of law. We want them to focus their resources on fighting crime and not civil violations of immigration code. The families are very important to a strong economy and to a strong society, and that we didn't want to do anything that disrupted families unnecessarily. That the economy works best when you have immigrants as part of your economy, and that we need solid, comprehensive immigration reform to help make our economy successful. And finally, that a free society is one where people are respected and valued, and that we always want to be a place where people are welcomed. The idea was that it had to be short and simple. It had to be based on values that were universal, that people would care about. It was consensus-driven. In the end, as I mentioned, I think about 100 people reviewed this document and helped to edit it. So it wasn't authored by any individual. It was really put together by the whole community. It was still fairly ambiguous. We didn't talk about specific policy recommendations, but wanted to focus on the goals and aspirations that we have as a community. And having said that, it was also very positive and very precise. The document doesn't have any negative words in it. It's all really focused on what we can do to be a better community, a stronger community, and really adhere to the values that we have. If you'll go to the next slide, the upshot of that was that prior to the release of the Utah Compact, in 2010, a Deseret News poll, April 27th through the 28th, found that nearly 65% of Utahns supported an Arizona-style approach to immigration reform. After the Utah Compact came out and received support from religious organizations, from media, from really a lot of national acclaim, that reversed. And in March, the following year, March of 2011, after the Utah Compact and the Utah legislature had met, we actually passed a bill that supported the idea of a guest worker program for undocumented immigrants. In the Utah legislature, we preserved important things like in-state tuition for undocumented students who graduate from a university here, a driving privilege card, lots of things that people might not think about a very conservative state like Utah doing, and we actually had 66% support for this idea of a guest worker program for our state. So a huge change in just a few months. I wanted to bring you up to speed, and Kate referenced this a little bit on what we've been doing lately. This effort back in 2011 and 10 really set the Chamber apart as the leader and the lead entity for immigration conversations in our state. Because we were able to corral business and law enforcement and religious organizations and other community leaders, it set the stage for us to be able to have really positive conversations moving forward and set the Chamber up as the lead organization to talk about immigration reform. Over the past year, we've partnered with the Partnership for the New American Economy to come up with a New Americans Task Force that we will be launching the results of on August 11th, just a few days after the August 3rd date that Kate mentioned. A few months ago, we corralled about 100 community leaders who believe in the value of immigration, who understand the impact that it has for our economy and for creating a strong society, and started the conversation by talking about what we can do to make sure that our community is a welcoming one. We broke up into some subcommittees and came up with really concrete action steps to think about how Utah can become a welcoming place. And so we have 3 very specific goals. One is to make Utah the most welcoming state possible, to ensure the success of our state's foreign-born population. This county that we've partnered with on this is going to create an Office of New Americans and develop a website, a one-stop shop for information and resources for New Americans. We're going to develop a communication campaign to welcome people to our community and underscore the values that they bring and what they do for Utah, for our state, and for our city. The second goal is to ensure safe, healthy, and connected communities for all residents. So we're going to create a Connected Communities program that will have small grants for neighborhoods to host immigrant integration events, helping immigrants get more integrated into the neighborhoods where they may reside. We're going to work on supporting culturally diverse events, celebrating our immigrant refugee history, and enhancing a refugee app that will be more inclusive for all New Americans. We have lots of other strategies as part of that, but the third goal is really to increase the economic potential for New Americans. So we're going to create an employers network that will include training for employers on how to work with immigrants, the skill set that immigrants may bring, and this, I should say, really is low-skilled hourly wages and high-skilled, highly educated folks. We really understand that immigrants in our society help to fill gaps in the workforce and help the entire economy work better. So it really runs the gamut across all industries and across all sort of skill sets. We're going to put together local investment and improve quality of industry-specific ESL programs, increase mentorship, internship, and networking opportunities for New Americans, and enhance business resources for New American entrepreneurs and business owners. And we have very specific tactics under each one of those. This was a project that the partnership brought to us a few months ago. We've been really happy to help lead this effort. We work closely with Salt Lake County, which is really the sort of the metropolitan, larger governing organization for the larger metropolitan area beyond the boundaries of just Salt Lake City proper. And we've been really, really happy with the direction that this has gone and feel good about the concrete steps that we're able to take. I will be sort of candid here and just say it's incredibly frustrating that Congress has not been able to move forward on comprehensive immigration reform. Over the past year, it's been easy to sort of throw up our hands and be almost disgusted with the fact that they haven't done their jobs to try to solve this issue. Some of the heated rhetoric has raised cause for concern and I think given an excuse for some of the more negative elements of our society to rear their ugly heads. And so it's been really, really helpful for us as a business community, working with the immigrant community, working with political leaders, to come up with positive ways and tangible ways that we can help to influence the immigration conversation locally. And I think that at this point it's nice to have something positive to refer to and to focus on instead of sort of the negativity that seems to envelop the national conversation. So that's a quick update from the Salt Lake Chamber.
Thank you so much, Jason, and there was so much there, and I'm sure people will have questions about it at the end, but I'm going to move on to Mary now, who is doing something similar in Des Moines. Mary Bontrager is the Executive Vice President for Workforce and Development and Education for the Greater Des Moines Partnership, where she oversees all areas of talent recruitment and development, diversity, inclusion, and education relations. Mary first joined the partnership in 1992 and then became Senior Vice President and has been in a similar role since 1998. Mary is also on several boards, and in 2001 she was named the Des Moines Business Records Woman, one of the Women of Influence. So Mary, I'd love to hear from you on what you've been doing locally in Des Moines.
Great, thank you, Kate, and welcome to everyone. So I'm going to start a little bit like Jason and give kind of a brief history of the work of the partnership but more so kind of the role this community has played as it relates to global attraction and economic development efforts. So our history really goes back to the 70s, post-Vietnam War, when our state governor, or our current governor at the time, joined forces with Minnesota's governor and with the faith-based community, and really became very strategic and intentional about refugee relocation from those impacted by the Vietnam War. And that tradition has continued and led predominantly by the faith-based community since that point in time. And so today, most of our refugees that we're seeing today are coming from Iraq and the Burma area. Also, about 10 years ago, our organization, the Greater Des Moines Partnership, we began engaging in the immigration reform conversations by co-founding what was called the Immigration Education Coalition. And the role of the IEC was really to educate the public at large, but from our perspective, specifically the business community, on the economic need for changes in our federal immigration policies. 6 years ago, we worked with a local immigrant business owner who had come to us asking for support and guidance in wanting to launch an event that would focus on helping immigrants who wanted to start new businesses across the state of Iowa. This resulted in the formation of what's called the Immigrant Entrepreneurs Summit, and we continue to be a strong partner by supporting this work both financially and with our resources of expertise. And as at last year's summit, over 1,000 immigrant businesses have actually started across the state, but many of them in the central Iowa area, just as a result of the interaction through the Immigrant Entrepreneurs Summit. And then also for the past 12 years, the partnership started and continues to host quarterly multicultural receptions as a way to welcome and foster connections with the diverse members of our community, many of whom are from our foreign-born populations. So what was the imperative to move forward and do more? Next slide, please. There we are, thank you. So as a region and organizationally, as I said, we have played a role for many years in welcoming the foreign-born residents and contributing to their success, but we really knew we needed to be more strategic and intentional about our work in this area. So again, why now? First, like many of our metro areas, our demographics are rapidly changing. So when we look at the stats from 2009 to 2014, we experienced in the metro area a 12% overall growth in our population, and this compares to the U.S. average growth of 3.9%. But during the same period, while we are experiencing tremendous overall population growth, during the same time, our foreign-born population grew 25.1%, while the U.S. average was 9.8%. And prior to 2009, a real shift that we are experiencing was that prior to 2009, 53.6% of our foreign-born arrivals came to our metro area directly from abroad, and just under 23% came here from other parts of the U.S. In 2014, we saw a significant shift in how those foreign-born residents were arriving to our community. So at that point, we now show about 35% of our recent arrivals come directly to us from abroad, but 54.2% of our recent arrivals are coming from other cities in the U.S. So we are rapidly becoming a second city of choice, which we attribute to a growing reputation as a thriving city with great opportunities for employment and safe and welcoming communities. But we really needed to look at how can we capitalize on that trend and others. We also are a region with a very low unemployment rate. So we currently are at 3% or a little under 3%, so we definitely have the need to continue to attract and grow this dynamic and diverse talent pool. And then coinciding kind of with the 2014 timeframe, Greater Des Moines was selected by the Brookings Institute to participate in their Global Cities Initiative. And under the guidance of Brookings and J.P. Morgan Chase and the leadership of a strong local steering committee, late in 2015, we unveiled our regional plan called Global DSM, a trade and investment strategy that responded to the changing global economy and our local economic and population shifts. Included in the plan was the formation of a task force to develop recommendations to make Central Iowa a more welcoming community and to develop a comprehensive international talent attraction and retention strategy. So again, at that point, tapping into nationally recognized expertise, we did join forces with the Partnership for a New American Economy to establish this task force, which we called the Des Moines Immigration Integration Initiative. On the next slide, we'll see just a couple of bullet points. One thing I do want to stress that we have many organizations in this community that have been and continue to do great work in the many facets of this space. So for us, it was more a matter of convening them at a common table to determine where the gaps are and what we can do to make Central Iowa a more welcoming region. Initially, the group consisted of representatives from government, public safety, education, business, faith-based, and nonprofits. What we did discover, however, early on was that we were missing several key voices, such as what were our international student populations saying, our recent arrivals, and then, of course, we realized we needed a broader employer perspective that represented the growing sectors within our industries, which those voices were added as we moved along. So after 10 months, we are finalizing our recommendations, just as Jason is doing, and we will be unveiling our plan on August 3rd, specifically to coincide with PNAE's Reason for Reform Day of Action. So we will be elevating the Reason for Reform. We will be unveiling the Global DSM International Talent Strategy, in addition to bringing in a speaker from the Immigration Council who will be doing a workshop on changing the immigration conversation. So how can we have more civil dialogue and speak to this issue in ways that are not turning people away and creating more opposition, but being able to, again, have that civil conversation. Since the recommendations are not yet public, on the slide I have shared with you some of the overarching themes, and you will see in many ways they mirror exactly what Jason was talking about, and I think some of our tactics are very, very similar. You know, with the first bullet, creating a Central Iowa Welcoming Center, we want something that is both physical and virtual in that arena. Looking at the bullet, foster integration of highly skilled and educated foreign-born. We know that from the data that PNAE helped us build, 64.2% of our foreign-born population in the Des Moines metro area have at least a high school degree, and over 21% have at least a bachelor's degree. But we also know that these folks are overrepresented in occupations that don't require a high school or a post-secondary degree, much of that due to challenges of transferability of credits and recognition of experience. So we're looking to create a pretty high-touch system that will really help to navigate these folks into finding alternative careers and getting them into training and education pathways. So an example, we know we have a number of folks with bachelor's and master's degrees in the area of engineering, and they're driving cabs or they're working in manufacturing. So can we take those folks and get them into IT pathways, starting in code academies and things like that? We also, when we talk about our international student population and retaining those folks, we currently have about 4,500 international students just in the Des Moines metro area, and we're going to be working on an initiative to retain those. I think, as Jason mentioned too, the high percentage of those that are in STEM disciplines, and now that the OPT status for F1 status visas has extended to 3 years instead of 1 year, we know there's a lot of education to be done in the employer community in encouraging them to really bring these talented graduates into their workplace. And then, of course, again, as Jason mentioned, continuing the advocacy, we know that that is a national conversation. So working in collaboration with partners such as PNAE, ACCE, the Immigration Council, and others to see how we can really carry those messages here into the central Iowa region. I guess just a couple notes on lessons learned. How important the data is, I can't stress enough, not only that we obtain good data, but that we continue to keep the data fresh and relevant so that we do know the trends and shifts that are happening in our community. As an example, we were surprised to learn that our second largest overall foreign-born population today are Iraqis. Really didn't know that statistic until PNA provided us all the background and data. And as to, well, I'd imagine many of those folks are highly educated and highly skilled, so it certainly is a talent pool that we aren't tapping into as best as we could. And then the other piece of our lessons learned was, as I mentioned early on, we really didn't have the voice of our foreign-born at our table. We had folks that represented them or that they worked with, but we really needed to get to know them, and we really have to continue to have that integration into all of our conversations across the community. So, thank you.
Thank you so much, Mary, and to both of you for sharing how you got there and the really exciting work that you're leading. Anna, I don't know if you want to facilitate question and answer?
Absolutely, I'd be happy to. I saw that a few individuals mentioned that they had trouble accessing the map, the impact.org, that they got an error message. Kate, do you know if they need to enter any additional letters or characters into the URL to access that link?
No, I think there just must be a glitch, and we've already notified our IT department. So the URL is maptheimpact.org, and hopefully it will be resolved by the end of this call.
Wonderful. If anybody else continues to have any trouble accessing the URL, feel free to email me. You'll see my email on the screen, and I can notify Kate. But that's a really great resource for you to utilize. It includes a lot of useful data. So we do encourage all of the participants on today's call to check out that resource. Now we'd like to welcome questions from our participants. Many of you are in listen-only mode, but you are welcome to submit a question using the questions toolbox in your toolbar, or you can raise your hand, and I'll be on the lookout to unmute you so that you can present any questions that you have to our speakers. For Jason and Mary, thank you so much for sharing with us the work that your chambers are leading to advance immigrant integration opportunities in your community. I do have one question for you both, and Jason, we can start with you, is just how you've built capacity in your chamber to do this work. My question directly would just be if you have a staff person or one or two individuals working on this, do you leverage volunteer support, and how have you grown that capacity to what it looks like today to support this type of work?
That's a great question, and it is. It's tricky because, you know, as a chamber, you have so many constituencies who have so many expectations, and prioritizing where do you put resources, where do you put staff time, I think can be a challenge. And the way that we have managed it is to kind of have a team approach. We have different members of our staff who all have different responsibilities, but really the smartest thing I think that we have done, and the best thing that we have done, is to try to look for partnerships outside of our organization. So our relationship with the Partnership for New American Economy on a national level, Kate, with your organization, our partnership with Salt Lake County has been really, really helpful in doing this. Candidly, for a lot of the work, what we're going to be releasing next month, they've done a ton of the legwork on that in terms of organizing meetings, bringing people together. We've put our weight behind it and said it's a priority for the chamber, but it's been helpful to work with the county and their staff and their team to work on this. My colleague Justin Jones, who is one of the policy directors for the chamber, has had a lead role in this. My colleague Nancy Lee, who works with me at the Alliance, has really played a big role. Then really it has to be a team approach. At least that's the way that it's worked best for us, because people's workflow sort of ebbs and flows, and different people have different availability. But again, I think that the healthiest and smartest thing that we did was to leverage our relationships with other businesses, other business organizations, and with municipal and county governments to really move this forward, because we can't do it all alone as a chamber.
Thank you for sharing. And Mary?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with Jason that certainly from the task force side, you know, we made sure that we had, again, those folks that are currently doing great work in this space at the table. And I think what we were able to do by this convening is just to give us all a roadmap moving forward, so that we're all on the same vision. And so the work that they're doing will continue, but the recommendations help to provide some direction to all the entities that are working in this space, how we can be better. And from the partnerships perspective, you know, we are looking at the parts and pieces of the strategy that we certainly would take ownership of, as well as we work very closely with our United Way, and they are currently underway with a plan that they call Opportunity. And within that, they have a whole section of strategies around our new Iowans that align perfectly to the recommendations of our Global DSM Talent Strategy Plan. So from our perspective, it's not so much the partnership taking and owning the work, our collective ownership, but giving everyone a fairly clear blueprint or roadmap in which we can all follow.
That is very useful information. Thank you, Mary and Jason. Jason Kirshner, I see that you've raised your hand. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you now so that you can present a question. You have now been unmuted.
Hey, Kate, this is not Jason. You can tell by my voice. This is Mary Stagaman. Good to hear your voice. And I want to say hi to my friends in Des Moines. Mary, I'm curious about the hub at the top of your list of recommendations, because we're in the process of building a portal for immigrants here in Cincinnati as well. And wanting to know, and you may have a similar answer to what you just gave on resources generally, but I'm curious about how you expect to build that, if the chamber expects to take a leading role and then hand it off to someone, and also how you expect to fund the work.
Great question, Mary. I'll start with kind of who we anticipate that might take the lead on that initiative. Currently, we have a group called the Latino Forum here in town, and they actually are kind of underway in plans to what they were going to, what they conceived as a Latino welcoming center. And so we were able to just by timing of this task force and engaging them, they now have kind of stepped back and said, well, can our concept be more inclusive to all and become that welcoming center? So it's not fully formed yet, but I think we have a good foundation of the work that the Latino Forum has started in saying how can we enhance that, become more that welcoming hub. As far as how to pay for it, they already had engaged partners as far as space and location, but we do not have the plan in place for the funding, to be honest. One of the things, and Jason references too, when at the table we have our county government and our city government leaders, and of course we're a metro area, so we will, look to engage more county leaderships outside of Polk County into this conversation. But there was a strong interest on the part of certainly the governmental bodies to see how this could happen.
Great. Maybe we can talk more about that when we're together in Savannah and then share it with a larger group.
Great.
We can strategize together.
Yes, would be great.
Mary, thank you so much for your question. We greatly appreciate it, and we're happy to have you on today's call. We also look forward to seeing you in Savannah.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Wonderful. Brian, Tony, I see that you've also submitted a question. I'm unmuting you now.
Hi, yes, thank you. My name is Brian Tony. I'm with the Dallas Regional Chamber, and I'm the Education Policy Coordinator here. In New York City, there's an initiative happening called the International Innovators Initiative with the city universities in New York. And they're starting international entrepreneurship incubator labs, and as a way to attract international talent to move and to expand in the United States. And so I was wondering if the two of you had any insight on what are the best ways that chambers can attract international entrepreneurs, and if you know of any regional or university level partnerships that are happening to make this more seamless.
Ari, do you want to go first this time? I feel badly that I'm always at the front of the line.
I'm kind of giving this a little thought, Jason, so if you have something to quickly respond, please go ahead.
I mean, I would just say that it's something that we've definitely talked with the universities about. They already are ahead of the game on this in some ways, more than the business community has been. They have programs already that are in place, working with international students, working to try to, recruit students, particularly in STEM, which is so important. And I think what we have said to the universities is let us know how we can help. There really are two elements to immigration work, I think. One is the actual policy component, and one is the communication component. So we've tried to be good, strong advocates for the smart policy element, but what we can also do is try to articulate the communication needs and help the larger community understand this. We're still in the baby stages of this, and hopefully some of the recommendations that we roll out next month will help cement this. But it's definitely important, and candidly, I think New York is doing exactly the right thing. And if you want to see a vibrant, thriving economy that understands the value of entrepreneurship and innovation, go to Manhattan or go to Brooklyn, and you can see that played out. And it's something that the rest of the country can definitely learn from. So I think we'd be interested in learning from New York's example and trying to follow it, even if it's on a much smaller scale, because obviously we're not New York, but we're happy to steal good ideas wherever they may come from.
Yeah, so I would agree again with Jason that certainly our universities are doing an excellent job in their recruitment of international students. We have an organization here in Iowa. It's called Study Iowa, and it's really a consortium of higher education that have come together to enhance their international recruitment efforts collectively. So we partner with them quite a bit. On a small scale, the partnership, along with leaders in the insurance and finance industry, 2 years ago started what is called the Global Insurance Accelerator. So really looking at how can we create innovation within one of our key industries, insurance and finance. And through that Global Insurance Accelerator, there is a competition for entrepreneurs to get into the accelerator, and once in, then they receive, they are paid to be a part of the accelerator. It runs January through May, and we just this May graduated our second class, and that initiative has attracted both year one and year two entrepreneurs from across the globe. So we have, in a small way, helped to foster that international entrepreneur.
And if I could add something, this is Kate, Brian, just two more programs that I would flag that are doing really innovative work. One is in St. Louis, and it's through the St. Louis Mosaic Project, and the city of St. Louis, having conducted a study that they need a significant influx of immigrants to make sure that the city starts to grow at a rapid pace, put together a very intense plan for how they want to do that. And one piece of that is this global talent hiring program, where they're working really closely with all the universities in the area to identify ways to sort of explain to current international students what the rules of the visas are, connecting them with potential employers. They have a mentoring program for local companies to have access to students that are currently studying at St. Louis universities, and several other initiatives that are part of that that we're happy to send more information about after this call. And then another state-level initiative is Michigan's Global Talent Initiative, where they're trying to do the same thing to encourage international entrepreneurs and international students to be able to stay in the state or be attracted to the state. And they also are working with universities and with local business to connect students and connect potential entrepreneurs with opportunities before they graduate. And so I'm happy to send some information on both of those programs after this call.
Great, thank you so much. I'll follow up.
Thank you, Kate, Mary, and Jason, and Brian, for that wonderful question. I believe we have time to take one more question, and as I hold to see if any more questions come in, I'll go ahead and review some of our Education Attainment Division resources that are available to all of you. One of the things that I'd like you to be aware of is that we do have consultants who work with us who can provide support and technical assistance to your teams if you're looking to expand an immigrant integration agenda. And we're also happy to help you to connect you with our P&A partners or any of your chamber peers leading this type of work. We also have Chamberpedia pages available, as most of you are well aware, which provide samples of chamber-led education workforce development best practices, information and research such as case studies, articles, and presentations. You're welcome to look at the resources online, or I can always help you navigate those resources. We do have a few pages on this topic, and we will be updating them over the next several months so that you have the most up-to-date research and best practices available. Lastly, I'd just like you to know that we will have a special session at our convention this year on this topic, which will take place on Friday, August 12th at 9 a.m. And the session will be called Thriving Together, Supporting Success for Underserved Populations. You've heard Mary Stagaman from Cincinnati present a question. She'll be on the panel, as well as Jay Byers, Mary Bontrager's colleague at the Greater Des Moines Partnership. And it'll also feature one of Kate Brick's colleagues as well from the Partnership for a New American Economy. So if you'll be attending convention, we encourage you to join us. And if you haven't registered yet for the convention and you're interested, feel free to contact me if you have any questions. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have regarding our education workforce development track. It doesn't look like we have received any any other questions? So Kate, Mary, or Jason, any final thoughts to share with the group before we end the webinar?
This is Jason. I'll just mention how valuable it is to have these connections across the country, to know that there are people of decency and common sense and goodwill all working together to try to find solutions. It's a difficult issue. It can be an emotional issue, and it can be disheartening at times. But I think that calls like this and the work that ACCE and the partnership and others are doing with individual localized efforts, it's reaffirming, and I think it gives me a sense of hope for the future of our country, that people can come together to find common sense, compassionate solutions to a challenging situation.
Thank you so much, Jason. Mary or Kate?
Yeah, this is Mary, and I certainly would echo what Jason just so articulately expressed. And I would also say thank you so much to ACCE and PNAE for all of the valuable resources and support that you provide to us across the chamber community. And, you know, the mention of things like the Mosaic and the Global Detroit and so forth, you know, it's so wonderful that our ability to learn from successful chamber initiatives across the country. And as a matter of fact, we will be going to St. Louis on August 1st to look at their Mosaic project.
Fantastic.
That's great. That's great. This is Kate. I want to reiterate the thanks and say it's such a pleasure to partner with ACCE as an organization, and also with Jason and Mary Stagaman as well from Cincinnati, and all the chambers that we've been able to work with across the country. It's really inspiring to see how you're leading this work, and as Jason mentioned, it is difficult, and it's a really difficult climate right now, but I think that the way that you all are approaching it is the right one, and you're actually seeing things happen and things change, at least at the local level. And so we're really excited to continue to work with all of you, and please feel free to use this as a resource going forward. That's why we're here. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate, Jason, and Mary, so very much. On behalf of ACCE, we can't thank you enough for sharing your successes and challenges related to this topic, and for helping your peers across the country launch similar efforts. I'd also like to thank everyone on today's call for your time. We greatly appreciate sharing information about this topic with you, and we look forward to working with you. If you have any questions, again, feel free to email me at ablakely@acce.org, and you can also find a copy of today's presentation available in the handout section of your tool bar, and today's session has also been recorded, so it will be available online shortly on ACCE's University Online page. So thank you all again, and hope you have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.